they're fighting quite effectively as a guerrilla force, small pockets, small cells, 2-3 people.
We will measure our success not only by the battles we win, but also by the wars we end.
Right now, all eyes are on Washington. But who's actually watching Europe at the moment?
And the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry says the death toll in Gaza is now more than 60,000 people since the start of the war.
I'm Venetia Rainey, and this is Battle Lines. It's Monday, 6th of October, 2025. It's shaping up to be an historic week in the Middle East. The stage is set for a peace deal that would end the war in Gaza, bring back all 48 of the remaining Israeli hostages, and begin planning for the day after. And all of this is happening exactly 2 years on from the horrific Hamas attack on Israel, when they invaded, killed nearly 1,200 people, and kidnapped 250. For those hoping for peace, it's nothing short of a miracle. And everyone involved says it's all down to one man, Donald Trump. This is the American president speaking about the deal a few days ago in a video released on Truth Social.
I want to thank the countries that helped me put this together. Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, and so many others. So many people fought so hard. This is a big day. We'll see how it all turns out. We have to get the final word down in concrete. Very importantly, I look forward to having the hostages come home to their parents and having some of the hostages, unfortunately, you know the condition they're in, come home likewise to their parents, because their parents wanted them just as much as though that young man or young woman were alive. So I just want to let you know that this is a very special day, maybe unprecedented in many ways. It is unprecedented, but thank you all, and thank you all to those great countries that helped. We were given a tremendous amount of help. Everybody was unified in wanting this war to end and seeing peace in the Middle East, and we're very close to achieving that. Thank you all, and everybody will be treated fairly.
At the time of recording, midday on Monday, Israel was still bombing Gaza, and negotiations are still underway. The death toll in Gaza passed 67,000 people over the weekend, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. But there are signs of movement and a cautious optimism for the first time in months. If this deal goes through, the question then becomes, what next? Later on, I'll be speaking to our Jerusalem correspondent, Henry Bodkin, who's just got back from a trip to Gaza City on an Israeli army embed. He told me about the level of destruction on the ground, how Hamas has reconstituted itself, and why both things will be an issue going forward. Plus, we'll be catching up with two best friends, one Jewish Israeli and one Arab Israeli, who we've spoken to throughout this conflict about friendship across the divide. Do they still believe in a two-state solution? But first, earlier today, I spoke to Dalia Horn, the sister-in-law of hostage Eitan Horn. Eitan is among around 20 of the 48 hostages believed to still be alive. She spoke to me from a protest camp in Jerusalem.
I'm here at the sukkah that we, the families, started building on Saturday night. We're half a block from Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu's home. We're here until the last hostage is back home.
How are you feeling? There's been a lot of talk, but not much actual movement so far. How are you?
I think it's exactly what you said. We need actions and not talking. I think that for the first time in months, we're feeling optimistic and we're starting to feel this feeling of hope inside our bodies, and then we push that feeling away because we're very frightened. Every time there's negotiation and talking and then it collapses, the fall for us, the families, is very hard. So we're here to try to hold the negotiation and the hope and make sure it happens.
How many people are down there with you? There were massive protests over the weekend as well. I guess were you part of those?
So now we're a small group, around 20, 30 people. We're like 4 or 5 hostage family members and a few people from Jerusalem. But you need to understand that tonight is the evening of Sukkot. So people are kind of making last things and organizing. And I guess that afternoon, the crowd is going to start coming. There's a Sukkot prayer here tonight at 6 o'clock with few communities that announced that instead of being at the synagogue, they're going to be here with us. So it's going to be massive, I hope.
Were you surprised by Hamas's answer last week?
They're a terror organization. I don't get surprised by their responses. I'm happy that we have President Trump leading this and pushing and making sure it happens. And we feel the huge commitment he has towards the hostage crisis. And he understands that the key component for future peace resolution starts with the hostages. So that's what we support.
It seems like the rallies by Israeli hostage families and by the Israeli public in general has affected him in some way. He referenced it. He talked about, they seem to like me. I don't know why. But it's clearly tapped into something in his ego. It's a clever strategy by you guys. It seems to have worked in some way.
I think since he entered office in January, we understood, or maybe even before, that he's the only world leader that has the leverage on who's involved. I think the potential of making this agreement. And we saw that back in January. And my first brother-in-law was released in February 15th because the Trump deal from January. So we just kept on pushing towards that. We understand that Prime Minister Netanyahu is prolonging the war because of political reasons. So we needed someone stronger to just make him stop the war. And at the same time, President Trump has leverage over Qatar and Turkey, and he brought so many Arab leaders to the table to make Hamas agree. We not only targeted the US government, we tried to do the same with many European presidents and prime ministers as well. We try to have conversations with Qatar and Turkey. We hope that it's all, will bake into a return of 48 hostages.
You mentioned that you believe that Netanyahu has been trying to stop the resolution of this war. Can you explain why you think that?
So I'm not talking about the current moment that we're now, because he agreed to stop the war now. And I believe that he knows that that's the correct thing to do. But I think we all know that in the past, we had twice opportunities to sign deals that were actually on the table. I think the last one was in June when Hamas agreed to this partial deal, what we call the Witkoff deal. We understood that partial deal is not what we want, but we also believe that you can transform a partial deal into a comprehensive only from within the negotiation room. So at first Hamas rejected it, and then when Hamas accepted it, Bibi Netanyahu rejected it. And we know of a few negotiations that were destroyed by the Israeli government. We understand that he wanted to prolong the war, and when I'm saying we, it's not only the hostage families, it's the entire Israeli society. We don't want this war anymore. We understand this war has concluded and has no meaning anymore, and more soldiers are falling, and Gaza is being destroyed more and more, and we need to start building for us, for them, for the region. 84% of the Israeli population want the hostages back home with an end to the war. So we need to rally, and we need to be on the streets, and we need to show President Trump and the entire world. That's what Israelis want. We are not our government, and we're the majority.
But you are confident that Netanyahu has now come round to that position?
Yes. Netanyahu has agreed to the deal, and his government, surprisingly, said that because it's an end to the war and Hamas leaders should leave Gaza and also leave weapons, so they also agreed to that. In a way, that's the best thing to Israel. And I know Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to do it in the end. We're here in case he won't, and we're going to be on the streets, as I told you, until the last one is home. We cannot sleep because we're frightened that any second something can happen. We know how those ceasefires are. And at the end, don't forget that we're dealing with terrorists. Hamas is the worst terror organization on earth.
I'm speaking to you on Monday, 6th of October, the day before the 2-year anniversary of the 7th of October, when Hamas committed that awful atrocity in Israel, stormed into Israel, took hostages, killed nearly 1,200 people. 2 of the people that were taken were your brothers-in-law, Aya and Eitan. Aya, as you mentioned, came out earlier this year, but Eitan is still in captivity. What's it like approaching that anniversary for you?
Horrible. I can't believe that it's October 7th again. And at the same time, I'll say that for me, it's still October 7th, 2023, It didn't stop this ordeal that we're going through, but forget about us. What's happening with Eitan right now? He's thirsty, he's sick, he's starving. He might be feeling that we forgot him because 2 years, it's a long time to be in a tunnel. He's being held in the tunnel since day one. That means that for 2 years, he has not seen the sun. He's in complete darkness. How symbolic it is if they announce tonight that they signed it and tomorrow they're starting the release and they're coming back home. We need to close this circle. We need to stop this spilling of blood on both sides. We need to be able to talk about a future. We, the Israelis, cannot think about a future here or at all unless the hostages are back home, because for us, every hostage is the brother and a sister for us.
If Eitan does come out this week, and I've got my fingers and toes crossed for you, and I'm sure all of our listeners do too, what's the first thing that you guys are going to do together?
Wow, I'm sorry. I get emotional because 2 days ago I was sitting at home listening to the news and there's a tweet and a push like every second, and we're so nervous. We cannot sleep since Monday. And I was just sitting in my room with the door closed. I closed my eyes and I just imagined and actually felt the hug I'm giving him when he comes back. And I could feel it in my body. And I think that because I could feel it, I know that it's happening. And I think that we need to start talking about them coming home this week without the if. We should create this reality. And I think this is part of the strategy that President Trump is doing. Hamas had said, yes, but, or maybe, and he said they agreed. So this is the reality that we're building. The first thing that we're doing together is hugging him so much and kissing him and feeding him and, I don't know, telling that we admire him. When Yair came back, I hugged him and I told him, you're a champion, you're my hero. And Eitan in Hebrew means strength. So Eitan is coming back stronger than ever, and we will take care of him and everyone. We have 48 brothers and a sister that we need to bring back.
That was Dalia Horn, sister-in-law of hostage Eitan Horn. If you want to learn more about the plight of the hostages under Hamas, the Telegraph has just published 3 exclusive extracts from the powerful new book of Eli Sharabi, who was released in February. You'll find a link in the show notes. Now, beyond the release of the hostages, the fate of Gaza itself is hanging in the balance this week. Israel has killed or injured more than 10% of Gaza's population. That's according to the IDF's former chief of staff, Herzi Alavi. More than 90% of its buildings have been damaged or destroyed. Entire neighbourhoods have been razed. And yet, Hamas fights on. How? And what does this mean for the peace deal on the table at the moment? Our Jerusalem correspondent Henry Bodkin was in Gaza City a few days ago on an embed with the IDF to Tel Al-Hawa, previously an affluent suburb. I started by asking him what he'd seen.
We went into Gaza through the Netzarim corridor, which is the east-west military road, which is just to the south of Gaza City, which the IDF used to basically control the movement of populations. It's a very significant kind of tactical asset that they have. We went in trucks surrounded by heavily armed Humvees. We went very quickly, a lot more quickly than the last time I went into Gaza, and I don't think they feel they have total control of that area yet. And lots of flattened villages, neighborhoods that we went past, like completely flattened in a deliberate way, then transferred to armored personnel carriers and went much more slowly, and they're set up with cameras kind of looking at each side. You could also see that a lot of these suburbs were completely flattened, but then we got into Tel Al-Hawa, which is the destination. Loads and loads of buildings are still intact. They have a lot of kind of multi-story apartment blocks, but not huge, but like sort of 3 or 4 stories, and they haven't been leveled yet, either by airstrikes or by deliberate demolition, which is such a feature of the Israelis' offensive all over the strip since they started fighting again in March. But I would say that it's in a kind of totally sort of post-life state. It reminded me of neighborhoods in Damascus or Homs that I saw back in June that were at the center of artillery barrages 10, 15 years ago, and you just know that they're never coming back. Too many of the buildings are too structurally damaged for that. The IDF had moved in there a couple of weeks before. It was incredibly tense, so lots of explosives going off. It's always hard to tell, but I'd say within a kilometre, some of them within 500 metres, which when you're using explosives like that seems very close. They dominate the area, but they don't have total control. They've got a big problem with snipers. They've had soldiers taken out with snipers in recent days. RPGs, big problems with improvised explosive devices, and also Hamas terrorists trying their luck of trying to kind of creep up close to IDF outposts. It's a strange thing because there's a huge amount of activity, there's a huge amount of tension, But all you see is Israeli soldiers. You certainly don't see any Palestinian civilians. They do not mix with Israeli soldiers in Gaza. And you don't see any Hamas. There has been some intense fighting as the IDF has gone in. What they do is they go in after a lot of airstrikes, a lot of artillery. They set up shop in these various buildings. And then they spend a lot of time looking at drone images, calling in airstrikes, and trying to work out where these very small pockets of Hamas fighters, who of course still have the benefit of this big tunnel network, where they are, where they're going to pop up, trying to take them out with airstrikes, with artillery, and trying not to get picked off themselves. And it's been such a feature of this war that, well, first of all, it's announced politically, we're going to conquer X or Y, as if this is about territory, which I don't think it is really. There's then lots of airstrikes. The IDF go in and they find that there's not that many people to fight. They get bored, they get tired, and then they start taking casualties. And it struck me that that was the phase we were in when I went to Tel Al-Hawa last Friday.
The soldiers that they're facing against now, the militants, the terrorists, are more green. They're greener, less professional, but still very brave and still want to fight. And I've heard other people talking about before how Hamas has shifted from being an organised militant group with a lot of organisational structures to a more free-flowing insurgency, basically, that has an endless stream of people to recruit from in Gaza, and that this is in some ways a harder fight for the Israeli army to combat. Was that what people were saying to you there?
Yeah, I had a fascinating chat with a very senior Israeli military official. That's the agreed language I can use. I'm not allowed to identify who it was, but he's someone with a very good overview of the strategic situation, but also the kind of street-to-street tactical situation. And of course, he was there in December 2023. Gaza City has been not wholly, they didn't go into everywhere, but conquered, in inverted commas, in the past. And he said, look, yeah, we killed all their commanders then, and we killed a lot of the rank and file then. But they've recruited a new wave of commanders. They've recruited a new wave of fighters. He says they're very brave. He actually said that twice. He said they're very brave. He said they're not quite as tactically astute as their forebears because they're younger. They don't have that. They haven't had that kind of tutelage. I think they've had to learn as they go. But and yes, the IDF, and I think this would have applied if we'd been speaking a year ago, has destroyed Hamas as an army, as a terror army, as a large organization that's able to move substantial numbers of people across the battlefield, that's able to organize into different formations, that's able to respond to intelligence. But they're fighting quite effectively as a guerrilla force, small pockets, small cells, 2-3 people. The phrase which stood out to me is he said they're fighting as a system. You know, they're communicating, they're probing for weaknesses, and they're trying to punish those. They have reacted to the changes forced upon them by Israel's overwhelming military force, and they're still fighting in a determined way. They don't seem to have problems recruiting. The level of the destruction probably feeds into that, because if you've lost your house, but somebody offers you a Kalashnikov and a purpose, then that might be tempting.
Let's use that as a jumping off point to discuss Trump's peace proposal. 20 points. And the first two, I feel like in light of what you've been saying, sound almost impossible. Gaza will be a de-radicalized, terror-free zone that does not pose a threat to its neighbours. And number two, Gaza will be redeveloped for the benefit of the people of Gaza who have suffered more than enough. You mention the never-ending flow of people who want to fight for Hamas and the level of destruction. And as you say, buildings purposely demolished that you just can't really rebuild. How is it possible for this peace plan to be actioned?
This is, I think, one of the real potential sticking points. The proposal in the plan is that Hamas disarm, they give their weapons up to be destroyed, and then they're offered safe exile out of Gaza or amnesty, which you'd think is perhaps a pragmatic way of going about things. What we're going to find out over the next few days is what both sides' red lines are, what they really can't accept and what they can accept. And maybe both sides haven't found out themselves yet. There's likely to be a lot of jockeying for wiggle room. And I think probably Hamas's best strategy is, because they have incentives to end the war, they can't fight forever. I think the amount of serious high value terrorists that they're going to get released out of this is a major thing, but people don't talk about that side of it so much. But you've got really
250 people who are in for lifetime sentences, right?
Yeah, big second intifada commanders. We don't talk about that so much because we're understandably much more interested in the hostages as people, but I think this is such a crucial part of what sustains Hamas decade after decade, is the idea that you can go and commit a terrorist atrocity, do a massacre, whatever, and there's a sort of implicit suggestion that one day we'll get you out because we'll take some Israeli hostages. Yahya Sinwar, the mastermind of October the 7th, should still be in prison, but he was released because Hamas took Gilad Shalit, and then Sinwar was released in a hostage deal. When you're talking about light weapons, rifles, perhaps RPGs, that kind of thing, you can never know how many they're starting with and how many they're hiding. So I think Hamas, if they go for the deal, they'll try to do it in a way that allows them in the future to exert some kind of control, to come back. And Israel, for their part, it's incredibly politically difficult. Technically, this is a big victory for Israel, this plan, if it goes through, because they get all their hostages back, like number one, absolutely massive. And Hamas ceases to exist technically as a terrorist organization. That should be massive, but actually politically it feels like a bit of a defeat because it's so far from the rhetoric that Benjamin Netanyahu has used to his own peoples, particularly in the last year. You've got Hamas members still alive in Gaza, and his language has moved in the last year from just defeating them to killing them all, basically, a kind of language of eradication. You've got the UN, who've been portrayed by Israel relentlessly as the kind of the great enabler of Hamas, I think, with little evidence. You've got the UN piling back in full flow. You've got...
You mean to facilitate aid?
To facilitate aid, that's part of the plan. You've got Gaza heading towards Palestinian Authority control. That is written into the plan, which has always been a huge no-no for the Israelis, and also on a credible path to statehood, quote, whatever that means. And you've got probably Arab troops in Israel's backyard, all on Netanyahu's watch. I think this is very, very uncomfortable for him. The key is to what extent Israel are going to put things in place whereby they will be able to control the disarmament process. They will be able to say, yeah, that zone has been disarmed properly, this zone hasn't. Or to what extent it really is going to be this transitional authority chaired by Donald Trump, possibly run by Tony Blair, who calls those shots.
Let's talk a bit about Tony Blair, rising almost from the political dead. He obviously had a huge role in the Middle East, even after he stepped down as Prime Minister of the UK. He was heavily involved in Middle East peace process back in the teens. He was the representative of the Quartet, which was the EU, the US, Russia and the UN. So he is a familiar face in the region. But I think for many people in the West, it will be, why is Tony Blair suddenly part of this? And is that even welcome on the ground in Israel and Palestine?
We sent some colleagues out in Gaza last week just to see what they thought of the plan, and without referencing Tony Blair themselves, no one in Gaza thinks this is a particularly fair deal for the Palestinians. They don't think it's a plan for Gazans. They think it's a plan for Israel that might also have the benefit of stopping the killing in Gaza, so they're kind of obviously interested in that part. Under a leaked version of the Transitional Authority, the Gaza Transitional Authority, which we think is what's gone into Trump's plan, there only needs to be one Palestinian on the governing council of this, and potentially Tony Blair in charge. Starting with Blair himself, this would be the ultimate redemption for him. I think people forget that this was real progress on peace between Israel and the Palestinians, was the price he asked George W. Bush for supporting the US in Iraq back in 2003. That was the sort of this roadmap. Do you remember that? The roadmap to peace, which obviously didn't go anywhere. So if you look at it in those terms, he really owes them in his mind, because he went into Iraq and he didn't get anything for it. Blair has very close links with a lot of people in the Palestinian Authority. He has very close links with Benjamin Netanyahu. The difficulty is, when it comes down to it, how good is he really at putting pressure on people rather than ingratiating himself with them, rather than making friends with them? I mean, our colleague Memphis Barker did a fascinating piece published a couple of days ago looking back at Blair's time in the Quad. He spoke to some of Blair's former staffers or UN colleagues back then, and they said that in the end they got really frustrated with him. He was just sort of seemed to be spending a lot of time glad-handing people but not really achieving much, and in the end there was this suggestion, I mean it was just a suggestion, that really what Blair was doing was coaching Benjamin Netanyahu how to deal with Barack Obama rather than putting pressure on him. And this is so important because implicit in this plan is how strong will this governing authority, this transitional authority be? Will it drive the pace of change? Will it decide when Hamas has disarmed sufficiently, when certain de-radicalization has taken place sufficiently in each particular zone? Or will Israel? There is obviously a chance that Donald Trump does not devote all his attention to this day to day for the rest of his premiership. There's a chance that Israel, or just to be fair circumstances, drags out this transitional phase, if indeed it even starts, beyond Trump's presidency. How tough is this authority going to be? Blair believes in the Palestinian Authority. He believes in Oslo and everything that's come since broadly in terms of structure. And I think what's not going to happen is you say, right, we've got rid of Hamas, or at least they're disarmed or, dormant at the moment, but we're not allowing in the Palestinian Authority. We're just going to kind of, at the point of international/Arab guns, peacekeeping force, we're going to kind of foster new institutions and the rule of law and stuff in Gaza to replace Hamas. That's not how it works. This is a region of relationships and affiliations. And if you're not affiliated to Hamas, you're affiliated to Fatah, to the Palestinian Authority. There's lots and lots of people in Gaza, security people, who are waiting to step up, and some of them who are already formed militias. You're going to have to empower those people and lead Gaza towards Palestinian Authority control or affiliation. Hopefully he's got the relationships to do that, and he's got the pragmatism to push things in that direction, rather than an Iraq style, we're just going to clear away everything that was here before, patrol the streets and let democracy and the rule of law sprout up. I mean, that was only the American plan. He was a passenger on that. I think that could be disastrous. He has to realize that there is an alternative to Hamas already there. They have to be empowered. He's got relationships in that area. If he realizes that, and he's got the strength to push that and to get Donald Trump to see that, then it could just work. But his previous record, especially when it comes to the Israelis, has been, I think, more one of ingratiation than pressure.
Just a final question. If this deal does go through and hostages are released this week, we've got a 72-hour deadline once Israel or Hamas come to some sort of agreement. Do you think that means the end of the war?
What was it? Michel Barnier, the great feared Brexit negotiator, he always said nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. And now both sides have said since last Monday's White House press conference, oh yes, the hostages part, we're in agreement on that part. There was some suggestion that the Hamas might argue for multi-stage withdrawal, and they still might. That's been the great icon to move things forward. The main weakness of this proposal, or the main difficulty of it could turn into a strength if it happens, is that Hamas have to give away all their bargaining chips, or their main bargaining chips, the hostages, at the beginning. And so I think they're only going to do that if they really, really believe in the plan and it's very, very detailed. I think if the hostages come out, that probably means there is quite a clear map for what happens next and the Israeli withdrawals. And that should mean an end to the war. The question will be, is the plan detailed enough to ensure that the Israelis withdraw to the places and at the timetable that Hamas is satisfied with? And I mean, that sounds awful sort of talking about what Hamas is satisfied with, but they're not going to release the hostages unless the plan looks good to start with. And again, it comes back to who's ultimately driving this. Is Israel in control of the pace of it, or is ultimately Donald Trump?
That was Henry Bodkin, our Jerusalem correspondent, and you can read his dispatch online now. There's a link in the show notes. Coming up after the break, how two best friends from the Jewish and Arab Israeli communities have managed to stay close despite the war. Welcome back. Early on in the war, our senior foreign correspondent Sophia Yan visited the Oasis of Peace, a unique village in Israel where Palestinians and Jewish Israelis choose to live together as a political statement. There she met two best friends, Adam Ben Shabbat and Nadim Tali, who told her about how their friendship and life in the village had changed as a result of the war. Adam joined the IDF as a reservist. Nadim has family members killed in Gaza, but they stayed friends. Sophia spoke to them again last October, and for today's episode, she's caught up with them for a third time to hear whether they still believe in the two-state solution.
I'm Adam Ben Shabbat, currently living in Beersheba, southern Israel. I'm 24 years old. I'm a videographer and filmmaker.
And my name is Nadim Tali. I still live in the village, Neve Shalom. I'm 25, and in my last year of studying electrical engineering in the Jerusalem University.
Tell us about what life has been like for the two of you over the second year of war. What are you personally reflecting on at this time?
It's been tough, actually, seeing everything that happened, still happens. For me, I think the highlight, it's not a highlight, but most intriguing part about this year for me was that I got asked to get recruited again to the military, to the reserve forces. And I had to say no and to refuse to go. And it was kind of difficult decision between my friends and my father that really wanted me to join. It wasn't a recruitment for Gaza. It was more on the southern line in Egypt and Jordan. But I decided that this time I cannot go again to be part of this war, part of this act.
Yeah, Adam, I'm really interested in what your views are of the military. I remember you told us before, of course, you had to serve. There was mandatory service, as is the case for all Jewish Israelis, and that was quite a while ago. You hung up your uniform. I remember you said, enough, no more, halas. But then the Hamas attack happened. You went back as a reservist. I think you said you went for 2 stints, but after that you really said again that you, and you said this on our podcast before, that you're a man of peace, that you really didn't want to do this anymore. And now you just told us about this third stint, right, that you've said no to. So what has changed for you?
I think that things got clear in terms of views of our government about this war. Like, it was clear, but now it's just, so in your face. And so they don't hide it or like just saying what they want to say. They're horrible acts. And just hearing a lot of stories about what's going on in Gaza from like news and, seeing everything that happened because we live here. And also from soldiers that are serving, they're telling stories about also things that they are not agreeing with. For example, the food, this GHS, how do they call themselves? The American company that serves the food for the Palestinians is inside Gaza. So the military is helping to manage it or something. And they're just saying horrible stories from this act, that everyone that passes a certain line, they shoot him. And sometimes there is just someone that get pushed and they just kill him for this passing this meter. And, Palestinians that are covering themselves in sand, that the military won't see them, that they have a head start because they're opening the food distribution in a certain hour. And, everyone just need to run like 1.5 kilometers to get the food. So just hearing about this horrible war made me feel like it's so clear that I don't want to be a part of it anymore. I think the second time we talked, I was in the same opinion, but now I needed to act because they asked me to come again.
How did your family react to that decision? You spoke before in previous conversations that we had that your father was at one point running a food truck and driving around to feed the Israeli soldiers. He was really quite supportive. And that was very controversial in the village, in the Oasis of Peace. How has your family reacted to your decision not to return when asked?
So it was a really harsh day. It was in the Iranian attack, the 12-day war. So everyone was on their feet in terms of everything. I don't know, everyone was on their edge because everyone was stressed about everything. Officer called me and they say, yeah, we need you as a driver. I need to get you back to the reserve forces. And my father really thought that I should go because, it was when you get missiles from Iran, everyone even when you get attacked by Hamas, by Iran, doesn't matter. The people in Israel, of course, get really, close to their patriotic, as everyone will do. They are more supportive to the military. They are more with the country, with our story. I wanted to, disconnect myself from this feeling, but after with the Iranian war, and everyone became more patriotic, and you feel it. You feel the war more on your feet. So it's more difficult to say no. I was between both sides really heavily and invested emotionally, and then I just decided. I thought about it like for 2 days, and I decided in my heart to say no.
Yeah, it's a really tough call. Nadim, do you feel like you have a voice at this point as a Palestinian in Israel? I mean, do you feel like what you think and what you have to say is heard by people from other parts of the spectrum?
It's very dependent on who you talk to. Me personally, I'm someone with like a big personality and stuff. So whatever I speak, I feel like I'm heard. But in general, I don't think our side is heard. And this is the thing that is like, to be honest, like other than what's going on, this is the thing that's like bothering me the most. The way people in Israel are behaving, the things they are saying about what's going on in Gaza, the like denial slash lack of empathy is driving me insane. I don't know how people, and I'm gonna like this is something that really bothers me. So I might I might rant a bit, but it's crazy to me because there's a lot of people that are very close to Gaza. They hear the booms every single day. They hear like what's going on. They know they don't have food, and they still don't have any type of sympathy, any type of like whatever for the Gazans. And it's like I don't understand it. I don't understand like the lack of humanity, the lack of basic. This is wrong. I just don't get it. I think the Palestinian side is not heard. It's growing, it's getting a little bit of traction, but it's like far from what it should be. I don't think people in Israel care about the other side, really. I don't think they care about what's going on in Gaza. They're more worried about the international perception, which is also like they have a twisted way of like viewing it. So, no. In short, I don't think people in Israel really care about the other side or care to hear about the other side.
Can you tell us about the discussion within the village, within the Oasis of Peace now with 2 years of war? I mean, what has it been like for village residents and the families, Jews and Palestinians that are living there?
I think it got to a point where everyone is almost in agreement, kinda. Like in the beginning, it was more diverse. The people were more argumentative with each other. They had more of a difference in opinion. Right now, I think people. I would say everyone is in agreement that this war should stop. The basic stuff. Adam can tell us more because I think he's more involved in like those discussions. I don't really take part of them.
I think everyone got to a point that there's not really arguments anymore. No, everyone want to agree that this war should stop, and obviously everyone is against this government, of course. So in terms of this war, there is no really arguments, but there is other parts of living together that brings up a lot of other arguments. But this is really specific stuff about the views of the village and people that want to make it clear what are the views, what are the exact views of the village about certain things. For example, yesterday they talked about letting armed people, civilians with a pistol or something, get into the village. So some people saying that we need to not let them in, and this is like really specific thing that we can't agree on. But I think in terms of the war, it's clear that everyone wants it to stop, and also we made like a sign that was hanged in the entrance of the village of stop the war, bring the hostages back, stop the starvation.
And of course, this sign was torn,
Yeah,
vandalized.
by not people from the village.
One last question, which is, what's your greatest hope now, 2 years into this war?
It's unfortunate how we got here, but But I think Gaza, I think Palestine is very much on the international stage. I think this topic is huge. It never was this big. And it's like kind of like a call for resistance, not only for the Palestinian cause, but other conflicts and other things that are going around the world. So I'm hopeful in that, in that way, that Palestine is truly like on the global map in a lot of ways. Palestinian people have a lot of influence. Globally, our voice is being heard, and it's being heard like loud. And I'm hopeful that like for the future generation, maybe like comes up a leader, or maybe things change, or someone can like do something major that things will change. But I guess this is where my like slight optimism kicks in. What I'm hopeful about.
My hope is immediate. As much as I think that Trump is crazy, I hope that this new agreement will just end this war as fast as possible, get the Gazans time to recover, to rebuild, get them on their feet stable and stop the killing. And also our hostages back to their homes, back to the country, back to getting treatment. And to put pause on this whole crazy situation, then move on forward. But for now, just pause it, stop it, and
Both of you told me before that you believed in a two-state solution. Is that still the case?
I think a two-state solution is the path forward. It's the only path forward, to be honest. And this is what I think should happen. In terms of any optimism, it's extremely difficult to see how it's going to happen, how it's going to like pan out, especially now when the West Bank is filled with settlements. I think there's like 700 settlers in the West Bank. I don't know how you're gonna, like, what can you do with them? I don't know how you're gonna split that. I don't know. Yeah, a lot of damage has been done, especially the last 20 years. I'll always be hopeful. I'll always fight for it. I even said to my parents that maybe one day when I'm, more stable financially and stuff, I might go and be a politician. So like, I'm always hopeful. I always want to do something. I always want to like, try and create a different reality here. But it's not looking too good right now. This is what I'm going to say.
I think geographically it's really complicated, but these are my hopes. I know it's a fact that both people that living around this land need a solution and need to live in peace, need to live in security. They have to have basic rights, human rights, everyone. I think it's really complicated to get to this point. I haven't seen the countries that are voting and recognizing a Palestinian country and like offering the two-state solution, drawing a map of how it should look like. But of course, I'm for it, and I think it's as Nadim said, it's the only way forward. But I don't know how it's gonna look like.
Thank you so much for joining and for sharing your insights.
Thank you, Sophia, for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sophia.
You're welcome. I wish it was under better circumstances.
Yeah. Actually, we wish that as much as we love you, Sophia, we wish to not get a message again about the podcast.
Yeah, same. Me too. Ideally we could be doing this to mark the end of hostilities rather than more
Maybe
fighting.
Next time we'll talk about our hobbies and stuff.
That was Sophia Yan speaking to Adam Ben Shabbat and Nadim Tali from the Oasis of Peace. You can listen to her previous two conversations with them by following the links in the show notes. That's all for today's episode. We'll be back again on Friday. Until then, goodbye. Battle Lines is an original podcast from The Telegraph, created by David Knowles and hosted by me, Venetia Rainey, and Roland Oliphant. If you appreciated this podcast, please consider following Battle Lines on your preferred podcast app. And if you have a moment, leave a review, as it really helps others find the show. To stay on top of all of our news, subscribe to The Telegraph, sign up to our Dispatches newsletter, or listen to our sister podcast, Ukraine the Latest. You can get in touch directly by emailing battlelines@telegraph.co.uk or contact us on X. You can find our handles in the show notes. The producer is Peter Shevlin. The executive producer is Louisa Wells.